watching the Hub Network. The Studio Show. People, community, progress. Here is your host, Joe Kennedy.
And here we are already, and I was sitting here talking, having so much fun talking to Melissa. Again, this happens every time. I say it every week that we do the show. I get so wrapped up in the conversations before the show or during the commercials or whatever that we forget we're doing a show almost. So anyway, but here we are. So welcome to the studio show today, and it snuck up on us. I was watching the clock, and then I quit watching it in about 2 minutes, and then it went by like that. So anyway. We were just visiting about a few things that we're going to get into with Melissa here in just a minute, and we're glad that she is with us today. And we want to thank you again for watching. I want to kind of wrap up a couple of things. We're going to do a little more in-depth show coming up on the new refinery issue with Southern Rock and all that kind of stuff, and answer a lot of questions. We've seen a lot of questions asked on social media, and primarily the big question being, where in the world is this thing going to be located? And of course, we know we've narrowed it down to Cushing, but where in Cushing, of course, a little tongue-in-cheek there. But we're going to get some of the players involved. We've been talking with Bruce Johnson, of course, the economic developer. He's getting some of those people together. We're talking to, of course, Terry Brannon and other people on the commission about this. And we're going to get everybody together in the same room, maybe ask some of these questions, and maybe we'll get a few of the answers. I doubt they're always never as clear as you want them to be, but at least it'll be a start on hearing directly from the people that are involved in that issue, and that is a big issue for Cushing. And we're going to even get into it with Melissa here later in the show about how that impacts Cushing and what happens once something like that takes place and gets started being built, and the influx of people that will take. So a lot of interesting questions there, a lot of things to discuss and talk about, and we're going to tackle some of that in the near future. So stay tuned for that, and we'll continue to update everybody on Facebook about those sorts of things, and we'll let you know, of course, when a show gets put together, hopefully in the next few weeks, we think, 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll cover that again. So anyway, welcome again today. We're going to come right back here and get into our guest, Dr. Melissa Amon. Dr. Melissa Amon. Dr. Amon number one.
That's right.
That's
right.
Make sure
we
like
to make sure we get that
clarified.
There you
go. That's right. So yeah, Don made very, very sure to label that correctly, which he did.
Okay, good. We don't want him talking out of turn.
He won't be in trouble when you get home. So all right, that's good. So we'll be right back here with Dr. Melissa Amon right here on the studio show. Stay tuned.
We'll be right back. Watch the studio show Wednesdays at 10:30 a.m. People, community, and progress. Join us live on the studio show or the Hub Network Cushing Facebook page.
The studio show is brought to you in part by Stillwater Transfer and Storage and AAA Self-Storage.
Watch Cushing Matters the third Monday of every month, only on the Hub Network.
At Davis Dental Studio, our patients are our friends. Unlike the big commercial facilities, Davis Dental Studios wants you to know you're not just a number. We strive to bring personal and quality service to each patient. Dr. Rebecca Davis has over 18 years of experience as a caring and compassionate dentist. She and her highly trained staff will make sure your visit is a positive one. So remember, when you and your family need dental care, Davis Dental Studio. You're not just a patient, you're a friend.
In my mind, I was never going to walk right again. Before we were through, we had walked 23 steps. And that was my first steps of freedom. This patient is saying thank you.
Bank of Cushing, a branch of Blue Sky Bank Pawhuska, wants you to know they are still the same friendly hometown bank. Local people that live, work, and worship right here in Cushing. Providing you the same great service, more convenient products and technology, making your local banking experience even better. A great bank, serving a great community. Bank of Cushing, a branch of Blue Sky Bank Pawhuska.
Since 2003, Pro Events has had one singular focus: great audio, video, and lighting systems. Never confusing our industry with the PC crowd, Pro Events always provides you with the best. most reliable options for your house of worship, school, or corporate training facility. Make your system stand out from the crowd. And remember,
for the best AV, you know where to go. Visit proevents.pro.
It's all good, man.
Participate in the show. Send an email to thestudioshow102@gmail.com.
All right, that was pretty good. I hit the buttons just in the right amount of time. We were still talking during the commercials, but I got it figured out a little bit better. So good news for all the viewers out there. It's a little better. Dr. Melissa Amon, thank you so much for being with us today. It's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for taking the time to come in and join us. I guess it's a little easier today than it was a couple of weeks ago. The school's out, so.
Yeah, absolutely. It's summertime. We're kind of in summertime mode, which really is closing up shop from last year, and we're into summer school already, and now we're looking forward, trying to get everything ready, get everything prepared, get people hired, and everything ready to go for next year.
And it's just an ongoing process, and I mean, it seems like school just finishes, graduation just finishes, everybody, and you're already on next year, way earlier than now.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's not much time between the two.
No,
right?
there's not. I mean, in summertime, while it's a different kind of busy. But it's still very busy. Because what we like in my office is we like for it just to appear like,
Nothing.
magic happens, yeah. And you end one year and you come back and everything's ready and it's all shiny and new and clean and the books are here and everything's where it's supposed to be and it's all ready for the teachers to walk in and do
Absolutely.
their job.
Everybody wonders what Santa's elves do during the summer.
That's right. They move books around and get computers cleaned up and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, very good. Well, very good. Well, we want to talk some more about obviously the school and what's going on there, but I want to visit with you a little bit about some of your personal background first of all, because I think some of that is very interesting. For example, you are the first female superintendent of Cushing Public Schools.
I am.
I think that is that's a welcome thing. I think everybody appreciates that. It's the female perspective. I think is a wonderful perspective, especially in education. You see more women in school.
Absolutely.
Administration, and that's always a good thing because it represents the real population of what.
Yeah, right. Because it's definitely a female-dominated workforce.
Absolutely.
And so it's always been very backwards. And it still is on a big scale.
Sure.
The percentage of women in administration in general, and then in secondary administration, and then in district level administration, it's getting better.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of lopsided.
You feel like some of the I know I talked to Lee Denny about this, just being a minority in politics,
Mm-hmm.
just being a female woman in politics, and it's kind of a dominated man's world a little bit. Do you feel like there's some things that you have to overcome, or at least get adjusted to, when you kind of move into that role?
I really think that has gotten better over the last few years. I shouldn't say last few years. I was talking to Dawn just the other day and had the realization that I've been in school administration for almost 20 years.
Wow.
And that kind of blows my mind when I think about that, And so I think over that time, the more females who have moved up and have gotten into positions of power, I think for me, it's really more about just that whole representation idea, that I would never, if you would have asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I wouldn't have said, I want to be a school superintendent. That's just, I wouldn't have told you that. I wanted to be a teacher. And I feel like, that you have these examples out there to be like, oh, hey, I could do that. I could get out there and do that. And so I think the whole attitude has changed, and the idea that you needed a certain type of person to be in charge. I think the idea of what leadership looks like
Sure.
has kind of evolved over
Sure,
time.
absolutely, and I think for the better, because I think that includes all the perspectives, and just like you said, you need some examples. I mean, and obviously being a man myself, it's easy to find examples, right, of men in leadership, because that's the way just things have been. But I think for young women, it is something that they can say, oh yeah, I can aspire to that.
Right.
I can aspire to do that.
Right.
It gives them some different goals and maybe some different ideas of what they could look like for them in the future too. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's
I
pretty
hope
cool.
so.
Now you mentioned you've been in administration a long time. So let's back up before your superintendent days. Let's go back a few years here. And so when you first entered administration, were you an assistant principal, or is that how
I started as an assistant principal at the high school. And when Colin Knight went to Oak Grove, I had just graduated with my master's degree.
Okay.
I mean, like, I was done in May, and it was my opening, I guess.
Right.
I hadn't intended on going into administration so quickly. I mean, I was getting my degree, but I really planned to stay in the classroom for several more years. But I also knew I wanted to be a secondary administrator. I didn't, I love my elementary friends, but
Right.
that's not my skill set. And so I felt like this is my opportunity to
Right.
at least get my foot in the door someplace where they know me,
Right.
and maybe they'll give me the opportunity to show that I can be a high school administrator.
Right. So just working your way through that, I want to talk about that a little bit too, because I think that's also interesting. Not only that you're the first woman that's ascended to the superintendent position, but that you really came from the ground roots here in Cushing. You're the first alumni that we could figure out.
Yeah.
I think I looked. You said that you looked a little bit, but we didn't see any other example of this happening throughout the school system. So. You were born and raised here in Cushing, is that right? Do I have that?
Well,
kinda
I
right,
was.
or-
We actually, my dad was transferred here to Cushing when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
So I was born in Pauls Valley.
Okay.
And we actually lived in Elmore City, if you know where
Okay.
that's
I
at.
know where that is. Actually, I know where that. I've been in that part of Oklahoma before. So.
Yeah, and so when I was 3 years old, we moved here because my dad was the pipeline superintendent for Kerr-McGee
Okay.
for this district, and so we came, and I started preschool here at the Methodist Church. I went to the Methodist Church preschool,
Gotcha.
and then
Yeah.
I went to, it was back when they just had half-day kindergarten at
Right.
Wilson, and then just all the way through Harmony, and then the middle school, and then I graduated in 1991 from Cushing High School.
So other than the first 3 years of your
Yeah.
existence,
I don't remember my life prior to living in
There you go.
Cushing.
And why would you need to, right? Because we're all in Cushing.
Exactly.
So, but that's pretty cool. You really come through the very preschool beginnings of school here in Cushing, and then all the way through, and then to ascend to be the superintendent of schools. That's pretty neat. And I think that shows a lot. One about Cushing too, a little bit about the opportunity that's here, but just that. Anybody can really set a goal and work towards it and become successful in whatever area they plan. Now, you didn't necessarily plan to be superintendent, but it probably became a goal at some point. Yeah, you got here anyway, right? Exactly.
Yeah, no, it definitely became a goal at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I think those are two pretty unique things about yourself and just the persistence I think it takes to get through some of the hurdles that may not be there for everybody else.
Well, it certainly gives you a different perspective on things when you're making choices.
Sure.
It gives you a different relationship to people.
Right.
Not only to your community, but to your students. I mean, because, even though it's been a while, I mean, I still had a very similar experience to what our kids are having today.
Right.
So it gives you a different way to look at things.
Well, obviously things change for the better, we hope. But yeah, just sitting in those same seats, maybe even some of the same teachers that were around. I don't know. That may be stretched it just a little bit. It's
Well,
been a little while.
I will say, yeah, it has been a little while, but I will say, Bob Coates, who is our high school principal, he was my teacher.
Okay.
He was one of my
There you go.
teachers. And he was, brand new, young. I was already in high school, but it was one of his first, I think, teaching assignments.
Right.
Where he came in, so I had him 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting for Bob now.
I think Bob's the only. I think he's the last one holding on. That was
Bob, you're getting old.
around
I
back.
think
That's a nice way to say it, I guess.
Yeah, that's way for Dr. Amon to say you're getting up there in age, Bob.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Well, we'll get a chance to talk to him sometime. And of course, your husband, Dr. Don Amon,
Dr.
number
number
two,
two,
is the
right.
assistant principal at high school. It's he's been around a long time too. He's been here what 25
Oh yeah,
years at least.
at least, yeah.
Yeah, so so a long time for both of you guys. Now tell us, you got two kids, right? With and Zane and Zach. Is that right?
Yep.
Backwards. Zach's the oldest,
Zach's the
right?
oldest, right.
Zane is the youngest. Both two very, very creative guys. Obviously, they're both. Tell us a little bit about them. What they're doing these days.
Well, Zach, he lives in Tulsa, and he actually is a stand-up comedian.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, I know, shocking. Shocking. And so he performs all the time. I mean, if you find him on Facebook, I mean, he's always performing.
Right.
He hosts some things. They're getting ready to do another show at the Canes. And he loves it. He works at a bank for his real job.
The real job. That's always the question. What's the real job?
Yeah, he works at a bank for his real job, and then he does comedy all the time. He works really hard at it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's a lot to that too.
Yeah.
We'd like to get him in here sometime and just ask him what some of those
for sure. I
processes
mean,
look like,
because it's there is a lot to it. It's
Yeah.
not. I mean, he can't just show up and I mean, I guess he could just show up and try to be funny, but that doesn't usually work
Doesn't
out
always
really
work.
well, right? So he does that, and then Zane, our youngest, he joined the Navy.
Oh wow!
And he graduated from college, and then was just kind of in that state where like, what am I going to do now? And so he came home one day last summer and was looking for some documents, and we were like, hey, what's up? And he goes, well, I'm joining the Navy. And we were both like,
wow.
He'd always wanted to be in the military when he was younger, but then when he got older, it just kind of didn't ever happen. And then he comes home and he's joined the Navy. So now he is he's gone through boot camp, and now he's in school. He's working in the nuclear area.
Wow. Yep.
And so he's in school.
Wow.
So he's working hard, and it's hard. It is hard work.
And he's probably way out of pocket. I mean, he's probably somewhere very distant from you guys. So
He's in South Carolina, and he'll be there for about another year or so, a little over a year, finishing. I mean, there's a lot of schooling that goes into it. I mean, so it's a very skilled area that he's going into, and then eventually he's hoping to be on a nuclear submarine. So then that'll be even more out of pocket. I mean, because
absolutely.
then, right now I can still text him or call him. It's basically like he's in college still. I mean, he's got classes during the day, and then usually in the evening I can get a hold of him if I need to.
So no cell towers underwater.
No.
So it's a little tougher. Especially I guess. All right, well that's pretty good. That's pretty cool to hear all that, and two polar opposites almost.
Oh yeah,
you got stand-up
Now
comedian
Zane
on
is
one end.
also really creative. I mean, Zane was in a band, and he's very musical and all of that sort of stuff. He's got an album. He put an album out.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So he's also very creative and musical. But yes, personality-wise, I mean, everybody likes to say, Zach is a lot like Don, and Zane is a whole lot more like me.
Yeah.
He's very analytical. He's very, things in a row, and so.
Well, I know. Now I've seen that. Now, to be fair to you, I've seen the other side.
Oh yeah.
Some theater productions.
Yeah, that's right.
And some different things.
You saw my theatrical debut.
Yeah, I did actually.
My debut in my retirement.
It was pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good. Well, you're kind of like me. You're kind of like
I've done that.
I can say I've checked it off the list. Yeah, exactly. So that was pretty cool too. Well, when we come back, we're going to get into some other things with the facilities and all that down at the school. So we'll come back here on the studio show and hear more from Dr. Amon. So stay with us.
We'll be right back. Watch the studio show Wednesdays at 10:30 a.m. People, community, and progress. Join us live on the studio show or the Hub Network Cushing Facebook page.
The studio show is brought to you in part by Stillwater Transfer and Storage and AAA Self-Storage.
Watch Cushing Matters the third Monday of every month, only on the Hub Network.
At Davis Dental Studio, our patients are our friends. Unlike the big commercial facilities, Davis Dental Studios wants you to know you're not just a number. We strive to bring personal and quality service to each patient. Dr. Rebecca Davis has over 18 years of experience as a caring and compassionate dentist. She and her highly trained staff will make sure your visit is a positive one. So remember, when you and your family need dental care, Davis Dental Studio. You're not just a patient, you're a friend.
In my mind, I was never going to walk right again. Before we were through, we had walked 23 steps. And that was my first steps of freedom. This patient is saying thank you.
Bank of Cushing, a branch of Blue Sky Bank Pahuska, wants you to know they are still the same friendly hometown bank. Local people that live, work, and worship right here in Cushing. Providing you the same great service, more convenient products and technology, making your local banking experience even better. A great bank, serving a great community. Bank of Cushing, a branch of Blue Sky Bank Pahuska.
Since 2003, Pro Events has had one singular focus: great audio, video, and lighting systems. Never confusing our industry with the PC crowd, Pro Events always provides you with the best, most reliable options for your house of worship, school, or corporate training facility. Make your system stand out from the crowd. And remember,
For the best AV, you know where to go visit proevents.pro.
It's all good, man.
Participate in the show. Send an email to thestudioshow102@gmail.com.
And again, did I push the buttons in time? No, I did not. It's the same. It's the same old problem. Somebody really needs to hire somebody here that does a little bit better job. Anyway, we're back on the studio show with Dr. Melissa Amon. We were just talking. She was explaining some of the facilities, the new facilities out there, which is what we're going to talk about now. But a lot of activity going on out there.
Yeah. Lots.
And I guess if we go back to Collins' days, kind of when it was for doing the first level of this, first phase of this, the idea was to bring everything into kind of one campus, one general location, and not be scattered out all over town. And I guess that's probably for student safety. One, just security is easier and more contained, I suppose.
Yeah, there's all kinds of reasons. I mean, like you said, student security, student safety, just proximity.
Right.
Because whenever you have teachers that really need to collaborate together,
Right.
I mean, the grade centers have helped tremendously in terms of being able to get everybody on the same page and make sure that we're putting out a very similar product. So, like, no matter who you get to be your, say, third grade teacher, when you finish that year, you're coming out with, you're learning all the same things, you're getting all the same skills, we're building on all the same goals.
Right.
And it's just much easier to do when they're right there able to work together versus when we were in 4 separate elementaries, and they might get 1 or 2 days a year where they actually had the time to get together with those other third grade teachers and,
Right.
and kind of align what you were doing. Whereas now that can be a daily conversation.
Right.
And so then it's the same thing. I mean, because there's still also a connection between, the elementary schools and the middle school and even the elementary schools and the high school. I mean, it's amazing when teachers start teaching kids skills that are going to eventually be part of their ACT skill set.
Right.
Now we don't tell a third grader that, but
Sure.
you start learning those things. You're laying the groundwork for what you're going to build on
Right.
for the rest of and so they need to be able to collaborate and be together.
And that collaboration is easy to say, but kind of hard to do.
It's very
because
hard to
if
do.
you're not in proximity,
Yeah,
like you said,
right.
with
I mean,
each
because
other.
whenever you have a planning period or something to do that, and you have to get in the car and drive. I mean, even driving across Cushing.
Yeah.
You're spending half your time in the car
15,
getting
20
there,
minutes,
and by
yeah.
the time you get there, it's done.
Right.
Your time is over.
Well, that I think has been that's a very subtle thing that has a very big impact.
Oh yeah,
on the whole-
absolutely.
on the whole idea.
And just teachers getting to know each other, teachers getting to understand what it is that their colleagues are doing, because when you're teaching, you're very aware of what you do.
Right, sure.
But sometimes it's harder to know what the person down the hall is doing.
And to see it and understand
right,
it.
and to understand like what's the purpose and why are they doing it that way, and all of those sort of things. Plus, it's easier for parents. I mean, right now I understand that it can be a hardship to get if you have kids that have to go all the way out to the pre-K, and then you have another one that needs to get to the lower elementary. I mean, when I get out and drive the whole district, I mean, it takes a while just to get in the car and just drive to each spot, let alone stop and get out and go and see, and it's a big thing.
Yeah, and it takes up a lot of your time just in logistics, and that all really is reduced. And so it really, I guess, the bottom line to all that is that it puts all of that effort that you were spending on other things, albeit little things, but a bunch of little things, now into the same area of educating the kids, at least in the same standards and the same principles, the same concepts, and that sort of thing.
And then, of course, you get down to the nitty gritty of, we're not operating as many buildings, then you've got all the utility costs, and then plus a new building is just, the savings on a new building alone, utility-wise, it's just crazy.
I was just getting ready to ask that question. You read my mind, because I remember back visiting with Colin on that, just the old buildings that had incandescent light bulbs, the same, they weren't LED anything. And Chris Hubbard over facility, is he over the facility maintenance, I guess? Chris was making the comparison of the cost savings between something that was all LED, because now we have the example of all LED as opposed to what. And it was a huge.
Yeah, it's a huge difference.
I was amazed at how much money that was.
Like the middle school is by far the cheapest building to operate, and it's our largest building.
Isn't that interesting?
And so it's just the new things they can do, and just the energy efficiency of the building, and it's just.
I'm sure from windows to everything else, because as buildings age, of course, that's a real
windows, just the everything. It makes a big difference.
And even some of the ability to control the heat and air and the AC and all that stuff from a central location, and kind of know what's.
And then it's just so much easier to keep these new buildings. They're just built. Security and safety are just it's just so much easier. Fewer doors.
Right.
The cameras, even though we have cameras in all of our other buildings, I mean, when they come with the building, you can kind of design the building with the camera in mind, right? Because there's no weird little corners where you can't, you can't see, and so you can think about that from when you're planning out the building and you're building it. You can think about, oh, well, that's a hidey hole. Let's not have that,
right? We don't need that,
right?
Certainly at the middle school.
Exactly. Clear shots. That's what we want.
Well, those things are so small that it gets into the details of building a new building, but things that you obviously learn and take note of when you are building new facilities, because those small things can cost a lot over time, and just the operation of the building and the maintenance of the building and the fixing problems like we can't see around that corner, we don't know.
Right, and it's about comfort and the care for the kids and for the teachers.
Right.
Having a teacher's lounge that is nice and has a nice place for them to have lunch and has nice restrooms for them, and same thing for kids, like the proximity of where the bathrooms are to the classrooms for ages and things like that. I mean, and there's just all kinds of things that
I know being married to a teacher that a teacher's lounge is a nice place of respite.
Right.
Yes,
exactly.
You get away from everything.
Exactly.
Get off the radar just a little bit there, so that's good. Well, let me ask you this question. I didn't really plan to ask you this question, but so teacher-wise, are we pretty well staffed going into next year?
We are down to two. We have 2 positions open for next year. We have they're both high school jobs, and we have a Spanish job open, and we have a social studies job open, and those are our only 2 positions. We have a couple of aide positions here or there, but those tend to really kind of fill themselves.
Right, they kind of work themselves out.
So, but no, our principals did a great job this year. We really pushed to try to get anybody who wasn't planning to come back to let us know as soon as they could.
Right.
Just because it is such a challenge to find teachers.
Well, that was my next question.
And that's one of the most vital things that we do, is being able to we want to have a selection of who we choose from. And so our people were great if they were retiring or moving on to do something else, or whatever it was, they let us know early, and we were able to fill the vast majority of our positions. I mean, again, got filled early,
Right.
and that gives us the opportunity to be just a little more picky,
Yeah.
and have have more choice.
And ultimately, the students benefit from that,
Oh,
right? Because
yeah,
you're
for
getting
sure.
the selection of the right teacher for the right subject, and you don't feel like you're in desperation mode, just
Right.
taking whoever you
Right,
have
you're
to
just
take.
sticking
Right.
whoever. Right. We
Right.
want to. I mean, that's our number one goal, is to try to hire somebody who is going to be a good fit, not for the kids, for the staff, for the district as a whole. That's our goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now we drifted off a little bit from facilities and got onto the most important thing, the people
Right.
that fill the facilities, right? But let's go back to facilities a little bit more. So that's kind of over there on the other side of the middle school, over there on that southeast corner, kind of that area. But at the high school, there's obviously some. If you've been by there lately, there's obviously some things going up there, which is everybody's. Right, everybody comes to the football games. So they want to know the new concession stand,
Yeah.
right? Is it going to be ready? All that kind of stuff. But there's some other stuff included with that. Though.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about.
So there are really, I guess, essentially 3 major projects going on at the high school. So you have the concession stand, which includes a concession stand, restrooms, and a kind of a little ticket booth.
Oh, new restrooms.
Yes,
new restrooms.
restrooms.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's my
Well,
goal.
they've had some trouble over the last.
We
few
did.
years.
I mean, just the poor old restroom concession stand. I mean, it had lived its life,
Yeah.
and there at the end of the season, it just gave it up.
Yeah.
I mean, you just go in there and there'd be a single flush, and it would just, that line ran under the ag building, and it would just not run under, it would run into the ag building. So that was the whole thing. But yeah, new bathrooms, going to have more, more stalls, more, and it's going to be super nice.
Right.
We are, I think, probably back on track now. We were a little behind because rain and all the other things, but
Boy, a lot
now,
of rain,
if you go out there now, you can see the walls. I mean, it's coming along. They are booking it along.
Good.
Mike Whalen went out with a little dry erase board and wrote days until first football game, and he goes out there and puts them, so everybody there knows when the first football game is, how many days you got left, and
so he's in charge of the countdown.
He's in charge of the countdown. He's in charge of keeping that, keeping the pedal to the metal on that.
Yeah.
And so just right next to that project is the freshman wing project.
Okay, that's interesting. So the freshman, now tell us what that's going to have.
So the freshman wing will have classrooms. It'll have 6 classrooms, and then also some office and conference room space. And the goal of that is just to kind of, freshman year is kind of that weird transitional stage.
Year,
like, and some schools have freshman academies. Some schools, keep the freshmen with the junior high. It just allows those teachers to kind of all be right there together, keeps the kids right there together. So that there is it's that whole collaboration thing we were talking about, because now we're talking about not just collaboration with your peers that teach the same content area that you teach, but now it's the peers that teach the same kids.
Right.
Because the freshmen in high school, the freshman year is critical, because that's where people get stuck. If you aren't going to go through and end up graduating from high school, I mean, we see the red flags coming up as freshmen.
Gotcha.
And really, you probably see it before then, but that's when it's really time to be like, okay, not only is this kid having a problem in algebra, but there's a problem in biology, and there's a problem. So, how are we going to keep track of everybody, know what's going on with these kids, do something about the problem before it's, because once you get to high school, it's all about credits, it's all about graduating. The clock is ticking. And so we don't want to look back and be like, oh, well, we should have. Now we can be like, we're going to talk
so
about
being a little more intentional with the freshmen in that transition coming in, and just helping them maybe through readjust and kind of maybe change your trajectory just a little bit if you need to help them get on the right track.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that once they get started, that they get finished, and then when they finish, that they are on the track that they want to be on. Whether that means they're going to go to college, whether that means they're going to enter the military, whether that means they're going to go to tech, or just into the workforce. I mean, we want to be able to make sure we have those connections to our kids and are able to set them up with the stuff they need to be successful at the next level.
Well, and a lot of tools available to them too. I think that's one thing that we found having be a senior next year, which is hard to believe, but going through the high school process, just the structure from the counselors, keeping them, you know, directing on what do you really want to do, even though we haven't always known what we've really wanted to do.
Right.
Have we, son? Anyway, I'll stay off of that subject. But then when he does kind of pinpoint, you know, when they do pinpoint that, they're able to say, well, you need to take this class. You need to make sure you get this under your belt and this under your belt. And then when you go to college, you're prepared, or you go to tech, you're prepared. A lot of partnership with Central Tech as well to give additional credits.
And Central Tech has some great scholarships, you know, for our kids that if they want to continue on past high school. You know, first of all, getting the 2 years of tech while you're in high school, it's a great deal.
Sure.
And then they can get a scholarship to go afterward. You know, there's just so many opportunities now for kids to earn that post high school credit, whether it be in the technology realm or whether it be in the college realm. You know, we have a really great concurrent enrollment program where we get kids just earning, I mean, all kinds of college credits, so that when they go to college, they're not starting at, you know, ground zero. One, they've already been exposed to the college curriculum, so they kind of know what to expect when they get there. And then two, they're earning credits at a much cheaper.
Well, as a parent, you're interested in that, right? Because it's a lot better for them to take that credit here than to pay the amount you would pay tuition just starting out doing the basic stuff. You know,
and we're able to provide support for them. You know, so if you're taking college algebra with us, then and you need help, you know,
somebody there.
We're there to help, right? Or college chemistry or whatever it is. You know, we're there to help. Whereas, you know, I can remember coming back from my first few days of class in college and being like, oh my gosh, and not knowing where to go for help and not knowing, you know, and so I think it's nice to kind of give them that support.
Well, that side, I want to talk about that too, because that's a whole other side of this. You know, besides the brick and mortar and all that stuff, we have not talked about all the fine art stuff that's going on there. I want to give you just a minute to talk about that, because there's a lot going on. It's easy to see where's the concession stand, everybody's going to come to a football game, right? But the other stuff that's there, the freshman wing, the stuff that's really benefiting students from the educational point of view, and then the fine arts point of view. So tell us what else is there.
So also on the front side of the high school, there'll be a brand new band room, cool. Which will just kind of give them some more space and then some just better use of space, so they can kind of have two little areas, because sometimes they need to divide up and do different things with their groups, a little more storage space, a little easier access out to where they go practice for marching and all that, and then also they'll still have access to the auditorium. So then once we get all of that front stuff finished, the freshman wing and the band room, then we're going to do a full remodel of the current fine arts area. So, but we have to have a place to put those people while we do that remodel. And so then that current fine arts area, which right now it has band, choir, drama, and then there are a couple of extra classrooms out there. Then that whole space will be redesigned for a bigger choir space, a bigger drama space, and giving them some of the extra things that they need to be able to do what they do. Right. You know, some spaces for practice and things like that.
Right. And that's sometimes, you know, it's easy to overlook some of that because, you know, you don't always see all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Like, you know, sometimes you see the football team out there practicing on the football field. Now, basketball and wrestling are a little bit more behind the scenes, but it's the same for those other activities as well. They have to have space to practice, to perform, to march, learning all that stuff.
Yeah, because they have also, I mean, with the exception of just the big group stuff that they do, they have solos and ensembles and you know, all kinds of different contests and things that they go to. And so they need to be able to have a working space where they can divide up and do things the way that they need.
Right. And you were saying earlier, I want to get this, give you a chance to tell the story because I think it's kind of a cool story. But the experience you had going to the band competition this year and actually getting to go into the sight ring room where nobody else, parents can't go, nobody else can see that.
Yeah. So our, you know, you were asking me earlier, like, what do you like to do? Like, what do you do for fun? And I'm like, well, I mean, you know, the things I like to do for me, I love to go watch our kids doing what they like to do. And luckily my husband likes to do that too. And that's for everything from, you know, school related things to sometimes not school related things. Right. Because I think it helps me as a superintendent to get a good idea of, you know, how do things work and why is it like that and how are we supporting those programs and what else could we do to support those programs. And so Mr. White, he's great to always, you know, he's very organized and he's great to always tell you, hey, if you'll be here at this time and we'll go do this. So he said, hey, why don't you come down to Ada and watch us in our competition? And I was like, perfect, I'll be there. And he goes, okay, so the first half is going to be the concert type thing. And I was like, got it. He was like, just be at this door. And I was there, got in, sat, watched the concert. It was great. And he goes, okay, as soon as they start to leave, you get up too, and you just come right to the door, and then you just follow us. And I'm like, okay. So I follow him down the hall, and here we go. And like you said, I got to go into the sight reading room, which, that's not, as an administrator, that's a privilege that I got. Right. And so I went into the sight reading room with them, and I had never done sight reading, and I had never been to sight reading. And I went in there, and, well, first of all, they had already rehearsed the music, and they told them that. And so then we had to wait, and so now we're sitting there, and it's kind of like these kids are already, they're ready to go.
So kind of, let me explain what you said there, because kind of on the honor system, they pulled out a piece of music for them to sight read, and Mr. White said, we've already played this song. We can't, this is not true sight reading.
So we had rehearsed that. And so then the judges came in, and they had a conversation about what was going to happen, and so it was probably 20 or 30 minutes that we just kind of had to wait for them to make a decision. And so then they finally made their decision, passed out the music, which came to them in like a little manila envelopes. All the kids pull out their music, and I'm ready to watch them practice. Well, they don't even get to play.
No.
They just have to count it out, and then they kind of. I was just sitting there going, oh my gosh, I had no idea that that's the way that worked. And then the first time they play the song is when they're judged.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they get so many minutes to practice. Mr. White has this whole system that they all obviously knew what they were doing when they were practicing, not playing, but counting it out and tapping it out. And then they played that thing, and I was like,
wow.
Look at that.
It is pretty impressive.
It's
when
very
you see, because
impressive.
really, when the first time you hear that is the first time it's come out of their instrument, and they have actually done it. And so that just shows you that the skills they learn all throughout the years in band come into play in that room. That's why it's that way. That's why you get judged.
It was very impressive. I was like, wow. That's, I mean, just in the fact that they had to wait. I mean, they just stayed. They stayed so calm, and it was like they were just like, oh, "That's not a problem." The kids were all like, no problem, we got this, And then they won sweepstakes, which is basically like a state championship in the band world, which is a really, really big deal.
It is.
And and that was probably the most rewarding piece, was to get to watch Mr. White tell them that they won sweepstakes.
Oh yeah.
Because they were very.
I'm sure they were ecstatic
and they were.
about
I mean,
that.
because again, like you said, it's not just that year's work. It's their whole musical careers. I mean, those kids have been working toward that kind of a goal, and it was.
Absolutely.
Great.
Well, and that is, I think, something, the focus that we have put on fine arts here in the last many years. It may be before that, but starting the 5th grade band program and those students coming up through, and I think it's starting to show some results there now. This year, of course, Mr. White is retiring. He's probably thinking, great. They build all these new facilities and then I retire, right? So that's kind of the way it works. So he's built the groundwork for a lot of future success, hopefully, in those programs. So that's a little bit of turnover. But again, in the plan, you've had plenty of time to make that adjustment. Obviously, there's been a plan kind of in place there a little bit.
Yeah,
to
and Mr. White won't be out of the picture.
Okay.
I mean, he is going to come back as a retired teacher for part of the time, and I know he'll still be doing jazz band, and then he's still going to be. I mean, I think he really wants to kind of serve in an advisory capacity, because we have 3 really great young new teachers.
I agree.
So,
they are very good.
Yeah, Julian Jusilla, Taylor Langston, and Ryan Smith.
Yes.
And they have just decided that they've kind of divided up the band duties and how they're gonna work together, what each one of their strengths are. And I mean, I think they're going to be great. And then Danny is just kind of there to serve as the one who's done it all, and to remember, okay, well, this weird thing is happening. Well, here's how that went the last time, and don't forget to do right. So it's the best of both worlds. They're getting to have their own experience, but they still have somebody there who has all kinds of experience, right? To make sure that they stay, that we're not, that we're doing all the things we need to be doing.
Well, and there's no better way to go out your last year than to get a sweepstakes and put that in your hip pocket and go to the house and say we did a good job. So, and even I think even the just shy of the jazz band making that an extra little perfect, but we're real close. So So maybe he wants to work on that for next year.
Yeah, and
maybe
I
that's
have
what
no
thinks.
doubt that Danny is going to make sure he has his. He's already had lots of input into the new band room.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah,
It's
so
gonna
don't,
reflect.
don't feel there's
Okay.
going to definitely be a Danny touch to the new band room.
Gotcha.
So.
Well, that's good. Well, and I would expect as much because I know he's, and again, you know what's worked over the years and what
Right.
hasn't worked, and so
Right.
that's good experience to draw on. Well, very good. Well, we're going to take another quick break. We'll come back. We went just a little bit long there, but we got a lot of information to get in, and I just don't know if we're going to get it all, but we're going to try.
Okay.
So I've got the bigger questions, and we're going to answer some questions about maybe the refinery and what that does to the school system when we come back a little bit. So stay with us here on the studio show. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. Watch the studio show Wednesdays at 10:30 a.m. People, community, and progress. Join us live on the studio show or the Hub Network Cushing Facebook page.
At Davis Dental Studio, our patients are our friends. Unlike the big commercial facilities, Davis Dental Studios wants you to know you're not just a number. We strive to bring personal and quality service to each patient. Dr. Rebecca Davis has over 18 years of experience as a caring and compassionate dentist. She and her highly trained staff will make sure your visit is a positive one. So remember, when you and your family need dental care, Davis Dental Studio. You're not just a patient, you're a friend.
Hello, Whitney. How are you?
John. So here's the proposal packet for the new mobile app.
As long as I'm running this thing, there ain't gonna be no mobile app.
Introducing the new mobile app, making your banking experience even easier. It's so easy, even John can use it. Bank of Cushing, a branch of Blue Sky Bank, Pawhuska.
We have a help tab if you need help. We will have.
I don't need help. I'm pretty good at this.
You are good at this.
Since 2003, Pro Events has had one singular focus: great audio, video, and lighting systems. Never confusing our industry with the PC crowd, Pro Events always provides you with the best, most reliable options for your house of worship, school, or corporate training facility. Make your system stand out from the crowd. And remember,
For the best AV, you know where to go visit proevents.pro.
Watch Cushing Matters, the third Monday of every month, only on the Hub Network.
When you have a team of physicians and nurses that really truly care about their patients, that translates into patient care.
It's a small practice, it's a small town. Everybody really takes that time to put the patient first.
Everybody cares what's happening to me and that I'm making progress and I'm gaining my freedom back and my mobility back. This patient is saying thank you.
RCB Bank is more than a transaction. We work to make your life easier. We help build your business. We finance your dreams. We grow your legacy. We build relationships with our communities. Come in to find out why our customers always say, RCB Bank. That's my bank.
The studio show is brought to you in part by Stillwater Transfer and Storage and AAA Self-Storage.
Participate in the show. Send an email to thestudioshow102@gmail.com.
All right, we're back again, and I almost got the button on time that time. I'm getting better. A few more shows. It's only the 16th show, so maybe by 36 or so I'll be.
You'll have it down.
I'll have it
You'll
down.
have it down.
So yeah, we were just talking about lots of things going on with the facilities. We don't have as much time as we'd like to talk about all that, but we'll put some of the renderings and some of the other stuff we want to get from you and put those up on our site too, so that everybody can see that. I don't know that I've seen a couple of drawings of it, but I haven't really got to look at it in detail. But you can just tell you kind of know what the middle school looks like and how that functions, and it's going to be very, very similar, I would think. Not necessarily the shape or the design, but we'll just tell us about what the
the elementary building, whereas the middle school is kind of like a triangle, the new elementary is longer, but in square footage, very similar size. And it will have the same kind of pod concept. So you're going to have pre-K and K will be kind of together, and then 1 and 2.
Right.
And then, so down there. And then there will be like a second story as you get down toward the end of the building, and that the second story area will be for the older grades.
Third and fourth grade.
Yeah, third and fourth grade will be up, and then but all your common spaces will be on the bottom, like the gyms and the indoor playroom and the music rooms and the cafeteria and all that sort of stuff will be down there where everybody can access it. And actually the pre-K area is the storm shelter, so it will be
good. Okay.
Those classrooms will be like it. So the littles don't have to move if there's a problem.
Gotcha.
Everybody else will come to them.
Gotcha.
Because that's another experience that's something to have, is if you go to an elementary school during a drill, the younger the kid, obviously it's scary. The alarms are going off.
Absolutely,
and even when it's just a drill,
right.
So the littles, if we can keep them where they are and then just bring everybody else there, then
seems to be a little bit, if you can make it less chaotic, it's pretty tough in that situation.
It's always going to be a little bit chaotic, but be easier.
Yeah, that is another thing. I just briefly want to touch on that. Again, we could probably spend another hour in here, but just when you've had drills, and I know that recently, at the end of this year, you had a pretty realistic drill, and everybody did pretty well in that, it seems like. And so everybody's settled in well to those facilities. They know that they're trained well. They know where to go, what to do, what to say, how to react to, and those are important things when it comes to the safety of the students. It probably makes you feel a little bit better, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, because it just goes back to, I guess, my old lifeguarding days. You always want to be kind of thinking about what are you going to do if something happens.
Right.
I mean, because the time to decide what to do is not when something is happening.
Right.
I mean, because then you want it to be rote memory, so that when something is happening and you go into a little bit of panic mode, you're still engaged in doing what you're supposed to be doing. And our police department and our fire department, the city of Cushing has been incredible in supporting us and helping us to be forward thinking, and they have been very forward thinking about how to handle problems that we might have. We actually had a little sit down with some highway patrolmen earlier this year and are kind of working out a time that we will be doing some more advanced drilling and getting those other organizations involved. I'm kind of hoping for Cushing to serve as a model school, because in terms of preparedness, we have done quite a bit outside of what we had to do, and we feel like we've really gotten to a place where we have thought about some problems and tried to handle some things on the front end that maybe other districts haven't had the opportunity to do that.
Well, and that's hard to do too, because it's easy to excuse the sports analogy, but to armchair quarterback that a little bit, because what are you doing up there? Don't you think of all these scenarios, the exact scenario that happened, don't you know? Well, and that's hard to do, because not only is it hard to think about that, but it's hard to also train and have a plan, and then have the plan executed, and then and then have the facilities support what you're doing, and then the personnel to support. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. And Tully Folden, I guess, the former chief of police, he's the school resource officer, is that his title? Yeah. And he's a big asset in that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Tully is so helpful. I mean, and he can, he's very helpful just on a lot of fronts. I mean, he's kind of our liaison between us and the police department. He's just real knowledgeable about things. He's great with kids. He really has a good relationship with our students, and he's a huge asset to the district.
And I would say, getting into the next thing we're going to talk about here, is that you have to have those foundational things. One, facilities, and you mentioned too, I think, just in talking between segments of the program here, that you got a good foundation. There's room to grow into these facilities. It's not like we just built exactly what we needed. There's room to grow there. And so as things possibly develop with a refinery or more business coming into Cushing, more students, more people live in Cushing, you're really prepared for that. You've got some room to make adjustments and going forward, what that looks like.
Right, because whenever we do, anytime we do anything, we always do it with a forward thought, because we realize that how things are today may not be how things are, a year from now or 5 years from now. And, even though we can't see too far into the future, we want to try so that when whoever comes after me, or even after the person who's after me, isn't sitting there thinking, what in the world were they doing when they did this? So we want to leave some room for growth. We want to leave some room for expansion, but at the same time, that's kind of normal growth. a
Right.
normal expansion.
Right.
So something like the refinery could cause us to have really abnormal growth, and we would have to then address those issues. But
Right.
we know also based on what happened when we opened the middle school, we expect to see an uptick in a surge in enrollment at
Right.
the time that we open a new facility.
Right.
We have a lot of people who want to come transfer into Cushing, and which is great. It's great that we have that, because that we want people to want to come here.
Right.
So,
Well, I've always said that one of the biggest highlights, one of the biggest features in this town, and one reason to come to Cushing is because of the school system, because it is such a good school system, and not to even mention the financial state that we're in, which is good. We don't have time to go into all that either, but a whole other show. But just the fact that we're executing a long-term plan. I mean, these buildings, we've just built them or we just renovated them, so they're going to be 50-year facilities. So it's not like we're at the end of our life on buildings now. We've gotten to the point where we can kind of enjoy a little bit of the life while we're planning for the next phase and whatever that looks like. So you've got some time basically to make those adjustments.
I mean, I feel like once we get these projects that we're working on right now finished, I mean, facilities-wise, we're in a really good place. And so then that just leaves us to be able to properly maintain what we already have, and then to figure out, what are some other things that we can do to best serve kids.
Right.
And to make sure that, because one of the other things we want to do with our facilities is, we talked about the difficulty in finding teachers.
Sure.
Well, we want, when someone is making a choice, where they're going to work plays into that.
Right, sure.
If we can offer them a comfortable place to work that's nice and it's clean and they have all the equipment, all the materials that they need, I mean, that should very much play into the decisions that a teacher makes about where they're going to go to be employed.
Absolutely. Everybody wants to work somewhere that's friendly to them, kind, and a progressive place where they know that they're looking out for the needs of the faculty and the students there at the school. With that kind of saying that we kind of have a long-term plan, that we're executing that, now we can kind of turn, and you said that this last school that will be built here kind of completes the big infrastructure components of what maybe the school needs. And then we're kind of maybe turning our sights more inward, I guess.
Right, and then you can go back and do some things like, we've always talked about trying to maybe add a little black box theater somewhere, so that when we have smaller productions, because our stage is big.
Sure, it's
really big, and so sometimes that can even be difficult whenever you're trying to put on maybe a one-act play. I mean, you're still having to deal with this huge stage. So just a smaller venue for things like that. Also, looking at just some of the things, like we've talked about baseball a little bit, like there's still some stuff that we can do for the baseball program, and then there's always something to think about.
And all of these, I just have to say, it's been a pretty successful year for Cushing all the way around. Let me tell you.
I mean, we've had a great year from everything from academics. Our juniors just rocked the ACT. I mean, we had tons of kids getting credit in concurrent classes. The band and the sweepstakes. We had all kinds of all-staters, from athletic all-staters to fine arts all-staters. Yeah. We did a fabulous musical production of
really
Mamma Mia.
You got to before I did. Good job.
I mean, and then we just had a lot of athletic success.
Well, I was going to make the comparison because I think this is really your first full year. This is your first year as a superintendent, right?
Finishing up your
number 2, yeah. So, but really, pretty good start.
Pretty good start. Pretty good year.
Dr. Amon, number 1.
That's right.
So I'm just saying, I think a lot of the forward thinking, a lot of the ideas, not always comfortable to go through the transition. There's always a little bit of a struggle to get over the hump, but once you get there and you kind of start to see the results and you kind of start to understand why we're doing those things and the big goal, it starts to kind of gel and come together. And I think you're seeing a lot of those results.
Absolutely. I mean, like, whenever we got the ACT results, I sent an email to all the teachers, not just the high school teachers, because, you go back to years ago when I was doing curriculum, I mean, and we were having, the gnashing of teeth, and I mean, just trying to get on the same page and and that was hard. It was hard work. It was hard for those teachers. It was, it was meeting, it was meeting expectations and things that it was difficult. I mean, but I think we are starting to see, because it takes years. You struggle through all that, and they may not see it right then, and they may be thinking, like, why are we having to do all this? But now we're starting to see the fruits of our labor.
I think some of it would be too, if you took some of that new stuff away now, it'd be like, oh.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, hey, wait a minute.
Exactly. And it's just like it's just like with athletics. I think a lot of the things that those coaches are doing with Summer Pride, with the weight room programs that we have, I mean, it pays off. But that's lots of extra time, just like our teachers invested in the curriculum, they're investing in building our athletes.
Right, and the program and the expectations of the program. Same as all the teachers. I just think I will give a shout out to Emily Moore, because her first year, that was a pretty good sized production. But boy, they did a great job. And with the help of course, Don and a lot of other, Belinda and everybody else in that. But it just shows that collaboration and what it can do, how powerful they can be when you really put all those experienced heads together and that kind of product.
I mean, we have such talented kids. We have lots of talented teachers that have great ideas. It's like at the middle school and even at the high school, we've been able to, with our ESSER money, to start some STEM clubs, and they're doing robotics. And they've been going to robotics competitions. I mean, it's just, they're crazy smart.
Those are things that just don't happen, but they can kind of happen now that we've kind of gotten past some of the harder stuff and we've gotten things in place. I think these are the things that you can continue to look forward to as a student and a faculty member or whatever at CHS or at CPS.
Right.
So lots of good things coming down the road. I would say the trajectory for Cushing Public Schools is nothing but blue skies ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's I always say, I love working here. I love the people I work with. I would put our school district up against anybody else.
Yeah,
I mean, I never want anyone to think, well, it's just Cushing.
Right.
No, it is Cushing. It is Cushing, and we have an extremely high standard.
Yes.
And I think our teachers just do a great job of meeting that standard and exceeding it. Well,
I'll just say, as an outside point of view, though, but Colin was a good superintendent, but you've come in right behind him and you've continued to increase that standard with him there. So, good job in everything that you've been doing and putting your hand to. And I know it's, like I said, it's not always comfortable making the adjustments, but you get to the other side, you see some benefits of the result, then it starts to all make sense, and everybody starts to benefit from it as a whole, and Cushing benefits from that as a whole. So. Well, we've used up the whole hour plus some. I went a little over, but you know what?
We'll have to do it again.
We'll do it again. Matter of fact, we'll do this on a regular basis, sometime maybe every 6-8 months, something like that. Especially when something comes up new, and maybe we'll get a little tour, kind of like we did of the school out there once some walls start to go up.
Yeah, once we get some walls, that'd be great.
Get you to take us through there or something a little bit and kind of explain where things are and all that kind of good stuff. It's good to see it that way, and then see it when it's a finished product too. So.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's fun to watch.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, thank you guys very much for joining us on the studio show. Thank you, Dr. Amon, for coming in and visiting with us today and giving us some good perspective on all that stuff and giving us an update on what's going on out there. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I think it's great for the Cushing citizens to know they're in good hands at the school system there. So, all right. Well, next couple of weeks here, Dr. Amon finishes out our month of May. Then we're going to start right in next month with Doug Carson from DCA will be in. He's got quite a story. I don't know if anybody really knows it or not, but we're going to talk about that. Derek Griffith, the new assistant city manager, he was the fire chief when we booked him. But now he's the assistant city manager, so we'll change our program to accommodate that. So we'll probably talk about both a little bit. James Austin with Love Inc. comes in after that, and then Jessica Worthy, the city court clerk, and we've got some questions of her about how all the budget works and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of stuff coming up in June too. June's going to be a good month, so stay with the studio show. Follow us on Facebook page. Send us an email if you want to see somebody else come in, and we'll get a hold of them and try to do it. And we'll get good, talkative guests like Dr. Amon. She filled up the space nicely. I didn't have to pull concrete blocks from the bottom of the ocean. So that was awesome. And you don't want me doing that, trust me. Less of me, more of them. So anyway, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the studio show. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for watching The Studio Show. People, community, progress.